How am I ever going to save a deposit to buy a house? Welcome to the Buy Assets and Work Less podcast. I'm your host, Steve Williams. And on this podcast, we show you how to stop trading your time for money by buying property and investing. Today, I'd like to welcome a very special guest, Milsey from MJB Seminars. Welcome, Milsey.
Hi, Steve. It's great to be here.
And Milsey, I'm going to hit you with the hard questions first, but I want to talk to you, I'm going to let you know how I actually met Milsey. I actually attended one of Milsey's events earlier this year, Mastermind and Money, where literally transformed the way that I manage my money, which has actually allowed me to buy property. And I want to share Milsey's learnings with everyone. But Milsey, I'm going to hit you with the hard question first up. Tell me, if I want to buy property and if I want to save money, can I still have avocado toast?
Oh, goodness. You know, it's surprising how many times we get this type of question, Steve. I know you're joking around with me, but it's very interesting, actually, because what happens is that so many people don't focus on the long-term plan and the long-term vision of investing because they're so busy focusing on the short-term satisfactions and the short-term quick fixes that we get and how we spend our money. So absolutely, you can have your cake and eat it too. The difference is that you have to focus on your long-term vision rather than just focusing on what you can get on a day-to-day basis. And that's the biggest mistake I think that a lot of people make, is that they think that when you have a long-term vision, when you want to invest and when you want to grow your wealth, that you can't have fun along the way, but actually you can have your cake and eat it too. You just have to have the right systems.
Yeah, absolutely love that. I think systems are really critical, and it's certainly something I implemented after your event earlier this year, so thank you. I remember as a kid growing up, my family were fairly frugal with their money, especially my nan. She'd actually, I remember one time she'd actually did a test run to the airport to pick me up because she didn't want to pay for airport parking. So she actually drove all the way to the airport, which I think she probably paid more money in petrol than actually if she had it parked. But I think I sort of inherited that frugalness from my family. And so when I bought my first property, I remember living off 2-minute noodles for the first couple of years. And I made some sacrifices, but I don't think it probably had to be that way, really, did it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that you have to, I suppose people have to understand that, yeah, there are going to be a little, like a certain level of sacrifice along the way. But when you look at it in the long-term picture and the overall strategy, there's actually not that much sacrifice if you have a system. So I think it's important to stress that normally what runs people's finances are emotions. And so what we do is we help transfer over so that instead of the emotions running the finances, the system is running the finances. So if you've got a system that runs your finances, the system will allow you to have the fun along the way, as well as planning for the long-term future. So if we don't plan for the long-term future, what happens is our money tends to dissipate. It dissipates in the area of our values, in the area that we think that we're going to get the most worth, most love, most joy. And instead of actually seeing that, you know, the long-term plan actually brings us that and more. So the system is the key, because if we're emotional, what happens is we're still spending money in the same way. So our system, when we teach the system, as you know, you still spend money in the same way. You still buy yourself little treats. You still pay the bills. You're still buying, spending the money on the mortgage and all the other things. But you're not emotional about it because you've done your work to set it up in such a way that the emotions take a back seat. It's like putting something into the GPS of your car. You don't worry about when are you going to turn left, when are you going to turn right. You just follow the system because it works and you know you're going to get there. So that's what the system does. It makes sure that all of that other stuff that's in the way can get out of the way. And one of the things you mentioned there, Steve, is, growing up with that attitude of frugalness. And when we grow up with those types of attitudes, we end up becoming loyal to those attitudes. And so our emotions are skewed towards the attitudes that we're either replicating from our childhood or trying to avoid from our childhood. Either way, the emotions are still running us. And that, unfortunately, is what most people allow to run their finances.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Nan, as well, if you're listening. I appreciate the influence you've had on my life. But what I'm really hearing is having a clear vision of what you're actually wanting is really critical. And when I talk to a lot of people, they're seeing house prices in some of our capital cities and they're getting a little bit, I guess, down on themselves because they're like, how am I ever going to be able to afford it? And it is quite stressful. And they think, how am I going to save my deposit, or how am I ever going to be able to afford a property? So what would you say to people if they've got an idea of they want, but they're kind of thinking it's not ever going to be achievable?
Yeah. There's, I think, two parts to that answer, because as you say that, the very first thing that comes to my mind when you speak like that is the quality of questions you're asking yourself. So the quality of your life is really dependent on the quality of questions you're asking yourself. Many years ago, I was in the place where I was saying, I can't afford to travel, or how can I afford to travel? I quickly shifted that around to how can I get paid to travel? And I set about finding a way to get paid to travel, because I just asked myself a different question. So when people are saying things like, how can I afford it? It's too far out of my league. You set yourself up with that mindset. It doesn't open you up to having a new level of thinking. So the first thing I'll say about that is the quality of questions you ask is going to determine the path that you take. So if you keep asking the questions of how can I afford it, or I can't afford it, you keep saying those statements to yourself, what happens is that everywhere around you, you see things that remind you of your thoughts. Yeah. And if you start to ask yourself a higher quality question, like how can I get paid to, or like just stepping out of the constant way of thinking, the cycle of thinking that you're used to, what happens is that new opportunities come. The opportunities were actually still there. It's just that you see them differently because you've opened your mind to have a different question. So now when that's the case, what you'll do is you'll do whatever it takes to have that long-term plan. Yep. And so one of the things that we talk about in our system is the principle of saving. So we don't teach any get-rich-quick schemes or any of that sort of stuff. It's not our jam. That's not what we're about. What we're about is doing the methodical basics, and the methodical basics get you the outcome. Yep. Anything that sounds too good to be true generally is. So people don't understand the compounding effect of just starting somewhere. And starting somewhere, for me, is savings, because what you're doing when you're investing in yourself is you're investing in that long-term vision. And the savings, there's a few rules around savings. You don't touch your savings unless it's to make you more money. So money flows to where it's appreciated most. So what you want to be doing is you're using your savings as a way and as a tool to appreciate your wealth. But you're actually not appreciating your wealth. You're appreciating yourself for being able to create that. So you have to start by doing the methodical basics. And the minute that you start organising yourself and becoming more disciplined and diligent and focused and having that system, you will start to realise actually how abundant you are. And I don't really know how to explain it, because people who've been using our system for many, many years, some of them, especially to begin with, they haven't got necessarily more income, but it feels like they've got more income because they're in charge of their finances and they're in charge of dictating what goes where, instead of letting that be dictated to them. So you absolutely can have everything that you're looking for, but you have to have your mind on that long-term plan, and you have to tell yourself, you have to speak to yourself with an understanding that it's possible. Otherwise, it's not going to be, because you'll literally talk yourself out of it. You'll stick with the lineage and with the patterning and with the mindset of I can't, instead of asking yourself, how can I?
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of listeners are probably starting to have the hairs on the back of the neck go up, because it sounds a little bit like a budget to me. And I know that when you talk budgets, it sounds very restrictive, and you think, I'm going to have to slave away and I'm not going to be able to have any fun, and budget's a little bit of a dirty word, so to speak. Yeah. And so, Millsy, now kind of getting down to the nitty gritty of what it all means, like, is it a budget?
I don't like the word budget either. So no, I've never ever thought of it as a budget. The way I see it is it's an organisational tool, and the organisational tool works on the laws of nature. So what I mean by that is, if I throw a pen up in the air and I expect the pen to stay there, right? I'm going to be really disappointed when the pen comes down because nature tells me that the pen's going to come down with the law of gravity, right? So when I understand the laws and how they work, money is just matter, just like the pen is matter, right? So money is governed by the laws. So what I mean by that is when you understand how the laws work, what you're doing is you're putting the laws into place and you're making them work for you instead of you resisting them all of the time and then wondering why things aren't working. So to me, it's not a budget. I don't like that term. It just doesn't resonate with me. It's an organisational system, and it's basically a way to plan and use your money where, like I said to you earlier, it's like you're in control instead of your money being in control of you.
Right.
And the banks and fraternities and everybody else out there have, they market to our insecurity, Steve. You know, they market to the fact that we don't want to own up to certain things and we don't want to see certain things about ourselves. So what they'll do is they'll say, if you buy this, expensive bag, you'll feel better about yourself. Or if you buy this fancy car, or if you go on this holiday, if you do this thing. And what happens is it distracts us from our goals and our intentions and our final outcome, because we always end up getting disappointed that we were hoodwinked by that, because that only lasts a short space and time. So what this system does is it organises our finances. So yes, you get to have the fun. Yes, you get to have the play, but you also get to have that in such a way where it's manageable, where you have created the system in the first place in order to reach and achieve your long-term goals. So you're not getting sidetracked by the emotional stuff, because that's just happening anyway. There's a big, for me, overall, there's a big spin on, I really notice because of myself, how big and how stuck I was in my emotional understanding of money. And when I had to learn that for myself, and this was going and buying my first investment property, going and not knowing how credit cards worked, getting myself into debt, all of this sort of stuff. It was like, okay, there's got to be something out there that shows me how to do this and is simple, implementable, practical, that actually allows me to live my life as well as have the house, as well as have the property, as well as do X, Y, Z. And I said about going and doing it. That's why I love teaching this, because, no one's ever, we talk about financial freedom, but no one's ever free of their finances. Their finances are always there, and you always have to have that some level of dependency on your finances. But you can make your money work for you, but you can't do that if you get in the way. And so what we want to do is, through the system and the organisational system, is help you to get out of the way so that you can just focus on those goals. And the biggest thing that takes us away from our long-term vision is money. If I've got a vision of wanting to help people, of wanting to step up financially, etc., it's money that takes us off vision. A bill comes in, or a debt comes in, or we've got to pay for kids' schooling, or there's all these other things happen, and it takes us away from the focus of that long-term plan. So what we wanted to do is set about creating something that keeps your focus on the long-term plan, and doesn't let it get distracted by all those other things that come along the way.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the thing is, when you've got a goal in mind and all these shiny things come your way, whether it might be a nice holiday or some new shoes or maybe even a new car, these things can come up and really distract us from the bigger things we're trying to achieve. And I've worked with people before, and they even got to the point where they had their house deposit saved and we were almost about to press go on a property, but they decided they wanted to go and buy a new Land Cruiser. And so And not only did that Land Cruiser cost $80,000, $90,000, but then also the lost opportunity on the asset they had have bought.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're about here on the Buy Assets and Work Less podcast. The fact is, if you can actually put your money, obviously have your life and live your life, but if you can actually take your money and save it firstly, but then also put it to work by buying assets that are actually going to provide a future benefit for you. Because if you go and buy a Land Cruiser, it's generally going to depreciate in value. Whereas if you're buying quality assets that appreciate over time, then your wealth is dramatically going to increase. So yeah,
and
look,
I think you've got to earn the right to do that,
Yeah.
You've got to earn the right to spend more money on those depreciating assets. You want to be focusing on everything that's appreciating, because you become more appreciative of yourself. At the end of the day, you look at yourself in 5 years' time. Are you going to be more pissed off that you didn't get the Louis Vuitton bag or the Audi, or are you going to be more pissed off that you didn't set yourself up? And everybody I've spoken to, because, I've done this for more than 20 years, everyone I've spoken to is like, the sooner you can get in, the better. And they're so grateful for having taken those steps earlier, because you're rewarding yourself. You're ultimately saying, job well done. You deserve this. And the thing is that we just think, and we've got this process, this mindset process that tells us that we don't. And so we get distracted by the shiny things. And like I said, there's no actual issue with the shiny things, but you kind of got to earn the right. You got to earn the right to understand that I'm choosing that's not choosing me. It's not a distraction that's going to take me off my path. So having that clear outcome makes a massive difference.
Absolutely. And to everyone who's listening, if you are one of those people who gets distracted by the shiny things, I'd love you to pop into the comments anything that's distracted you from achieving your goals. And it can be small or big. All the small things, they add up over time. Doesn't necessarily need to be like a car or something like that, but all those little things add up. But on the flip side, and now this may sound a little bit kind of silly, but as I said, I kind of grew up from a family that were quite frugal with their money. They always had the Woolies and the Coles catalog out, trying to find the best deal for everything before they set out and went on their weekly shop. But that actually carried through with me even to today. And when I go out for a fancy dinner or something like that, there's still an element of guilt that I have. And even though I enjoy the dinner, when I go to get my card out and pay $100, $200 for a nice meal, there's a part of me that actually makes me feel a little bit sick. But having said that, now that I've implemented a bit of organization and used the principles that we're talking about, I've actually got that money aside. So that guilt is actually not there, because I know that I already have the structure and the organization in place. So I can enjoy the dinner guilt-free, but still know that I'm actually achieving my goals for the long term.
And, that's the biggest thing. I think one of our, the first step in our process is savings, but the next step in our process is paying yourself, right?
Yep.
And one's paying yourself for the future, one's paying yourself now, and rewarding yourself now for a job well done. And it's one of so many people's favourite step, because they used to go buy the dress or take themselves out for dinner or take themselves to a movie, but they always used to perceive that they were taking money that they shouldn't be spending, but it should be going to the mortgage or something else. So in having the system and the structure, what it does is it takes away those guilt, that emotion around spending the money, because I've actually done all the work that says I can afford and I can do this, I can spend this money. And I don't need to feel guilty about it. Don't need to bring any emotional react, because this is the thing, Steve. Money has no moral value. It is not good. It's not bad. But what happens is that we make it good and we make it bad based on our perception of our experiences. And so, like I grew up in a situation where it was always about not being greedy and helping everybody. So whenever I went to spend money on myself, I'd feel guilty. So even though I had things, I didn't have the things, because there was the things plus the guilt. Now, when I have the things because I love them, not because I think that they need to make me feel better about myself, and also not trying to prove to anybody that I've got wealth. Does that make sense? It's just like I've got it because I've love it, and it's not taking me away from my goals. I'm not getting hoodwinked into having those things. It's because I am the master of it rather than it being the master of me. Yeah,
love that. Great. So we've talked a lot about organization and putting together a bit of a plan for how to manage your money. And we are coming towards the end of the episode, and we've had a great conversation so far. And I think we're going to have to get you back to go in a bit more detail, because I'm certainly learning a lot from this, and I hope all our listeners are as well. But in a nutshell, say in 30 seconds, what should people do to start to get their money organized and get started?
Okay. The first step is savings. There's a whole stack of rules around savings. But and the rules are actually important because of what they do and how they push you to have the long-term plan. But for the very, very first step, savings is number one. Number two is there's three things, actually, Steve, that affect our finances: your thoughts, your reason, and your strategy. So your thought is that you've got to know that you deserve, because if you don't, everything that you do is going to reflect back to you that you're not deserving. Reason, you've got to have a reason for having wealth. That's having a long-term vision, a long-term plan. Everybody has a reason, but their reason isn't big enough, generally speaking, because there's a certain point in everybody's, doesn't matter how much wealth you've got, there's a certain point in everybody's experience where they cap their reason. And so what that means is that there comes a point once you've fed the kids and you've housed the kids and you've got enough, that you're like, okay, I don't need any more, I'm comfortable. And that's actually a very dangerous situation to be in, because it keeps you very, very stagnant. So you need to have a reason that is cathedralized and greater than you.
Got it.
And then the third thing is that you've got to have a strategy that follows the laws. And the first of those is savings.
Yep.
And I think that out of everything that you can do is if you can sort the first part of your mindset out, understand, look at the world with how you deserve, have a reason why you want to grow your wealth, and start to have a long-term plan, and start by putting a strategy in place of savings. That's a very good foundation for the rest of what needs to be done.
Amazing. Awesome. Love it. Well,
Cool.
Millsy, I've learned a lot today, and I really appreciate having you here and sharing all your knowledge and wisdom. I always love to talk about money because it's really the precursor to saving. It's a precursor to investing, and it's the precursor to working less, really, because if we don't have savings and if we don't have investments, then unfortunately we are trapped in working till the end of our time. And so today's really inspired us to take a bit of action. But if people are thinking, okay, what can I actually do to dive further deeper into this? What do you offer that might be an opportunity for them to learn a bit more?
Yeah, so since we're talking about money, I think that the best place to look for that is we have a 2-day live event that we run all across Australia at different times of the year. And the 2-day live event is basically sharing all of the principles around wealth and money minds. It's called Mastermind and Money because it's about mastering your mind and mastering your money. And we show you what blocks are in the way and how to sort that out. And we show you how to have a system and a strategy that's literally foolproof, that once you do that, you literally cannot, I don't know how I ever survived without this system. It just is so easy and so simple and so manageable. So we have that. It's a 2-day live event that we run across Australia, Mastermind and Money. And I think that's the best place to start. It's a commitment of time because you've got to give up a weekend. But the what you gain out of that weekend is so it really is life transformative, because you really start to understand how you play the game of money, and it gives you a really foolproof strategy to put into place as you leave that weekend. It's very, very cool.
Perfect. Well, what we'll do is we'll pop a link to that event in our show notes and to the comments. So if you are interested, check it out. I know it's crazy good value. Like we're talking a pittance. Yeah. For the amount of benefit you get out of it.
We're not even charging for it. We really just the seminar itself is just jam-packed with value. After that, you can go on and do other things if you want to, but if you left and did nothing, you would get a stack of value from just that event. It's really, really, really cool.
Amazing. Well, everyone, I'll put that link in the comments and show notes below. And just to really recap on what today is about, it's all about having a vision and having a really strong reason behind that vision. And that's going to really drive and motivate you to actually take the action steps to work towards it. And then really getting organized with your money, putting into place some structure so that really you don't have to think about it. And it kind of operates week in, week out. And you know at the end of the day that you've got the money to do what you want to do. You can still enjoy your life, but you can also work towards your goals for the future and know that down the track you can work less and hopefully retire. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Great summary, Steve.
Great to have you here today, Millsy. Awesome chat. And until next time, we look forward to seeing you on the next episode where we can buy assets and work less together.
All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs, and speak to a professional.